Hello. Thank you for
Hello,
having me.
hello, DC. Yeah. Welcome to this.
Welcome to what? What's it called?
Oh, just it doesn't have a name yet. I mean, it really is kind of just ongoing conversations we've been having. Been putting up more videos over the last few um, weeks, really, than I've ever have, and it's just nice to be able to connect with people to talk about the kind of things that spirituality and things like that of various kinds. And what kind of that's beautiful music. What are you listening to, friend?
This is so I make it a habit of when I'm starting my day correctly. I
Hmm.
listen to some morning ragas. Ragas have like a set time you're supposed to listen to them, so I just
Yeah,
face the sun, the rising sun, and then toss on a raga that's supposed to be good morning. It's been really helpful. Really
beautiful.
trying to well, ragas are meant to kind of I have this book by Hazrat Khan. He talks about ragas are meant to kind of help you remain in stillness, So you pay attention to the raga, and focus in and zero in on the raga, and that kind of helps you to move your body and move through pain and kind of block out all the other stuff besides your body.
I
So
know.
ragas
I
are nice
know.
for that.
I'm sorry, friend. I know that raga is a very much a very loved form of music in India. Usually around 45 minutes or sometimes several hours. How long do the ones you listen to?
Yeah, so ragas can definitely, they're usually longer. They're not like the longest one that they have on Spotify, and you have to remember these are really ragas are they're interesting because they've been adapted to like secular
Sure.
and just recorded, but yeah, they're usually longer because they're supposed to be for like a meditative session, right? But mine's is the short one would be 15, and a normal size one would be 15, and a short one would be like 8 minutes, and
I
then a
see.
longer one would be like 30. I like the 30-minute ones, but yeah.
There's a couple. Do you like listening to ragas that are instrumental only, or do you like vocal also?
Both, yeah, both. The when you listen to the instruments, you can really tell that the instruments are just mimicking the voice anyway. So
Mm.
you know, and
Well,
vice versa. Well, no, the instruments are just mimicking the voice because the voice was the first instrument.
there's a there's a man I listen to who's very loved, Kumar Gandharva.
What?
Kumar Gandharva. He was very.
Oh, okay.
He only had one lung because he had been sick as a boy. When he was 9 years old, he was very brilliant, and then he went sick for a few years, and then he came back as one of the most beautiful male vocalists of that tradition.
Oh, and you only have one lung.
Say it one more time. Yeah, he had one lung. If you look him
Wow.
up, there's so many beautiful. I mean, there's so many kinds of beautiful things. I just thought as you listen to different things, check him out sometimes because sometimes he does have smaller things, but mostly they're longer.
Yeah, I would be down for that. I love most ragas. Ragas are, for me, a testament to humanness and like civilization. They're this music that are eons old. Again, like older than Christ.
Three
Uh,
times older than Christ. Sometimes you're absolutely.
yeah,
I agree with you. I love that. I like raga too.
it's some of the
Also,
most complicated music.
some of those
It's some
things
of the
have
most.
been going on for like one thing I've heard. I like to hear about. While we're on the subject, we seem to be talking about raga, which is cool. Malhar, you know the Malhar. It's like it brings rain. They say.
It brings rain.
Yeah, it's a raga that brings rain. It's a Malhar.
Yeah. Once you start looking into the history of all these ragas, yeah, they're definitely mystical in nature for sure. Like that's where a lot of these ancient civilizations put a lot of their advancements was into like the music and the art, and people think that it's just because it was art, but the music for them was like a science too, you know, and it was a spiritual practice. They say that like the monks could like cut like rocks with like the sound of the ragas and stuff,
oh my
vibrations. God. So it's go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think it's interesting how the West has broken things into parts, and one of the ways that they've made art somewhat sacred, but mostly commercialized lately. But in any case, divorced from the other kinds of things that, like you're talking about, the mathematics of the universe, the music of the universe, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and also just in medicine and just various ways of applying it. We don't, we're not trained to think of it that way. And it's strictly Western thought, because Western thought is unfortunately very, they compartmentalize. Right. I agree with you. And what they do, it's almost, forgive me, friend. If you look at the compartmentalization, it also tends to like diminish also. Like when you put something over here and say, well, this is just music, or this is just art, or this is just whatever.
For people that understood the sacredness of ragas and like stuff like that, music was never just music, because music was never just entertainment,
Right.
And the fact that music is viewed almost solely as entertainment nowadays is a large reason why musicians are in the state we are in now, like not being able to feed ourselves, no matter how good or successful you are, not being able to feed yourself off of your craft, because we're only viewed as entertainment. Entertainment is, you can do with or without, instead of it being this sole sustenance.
I agree with you 100%. I think it's interesting that if you look at like the last, I'm just going on a tangent now, friend, but in the West, in the last like hundreds or so years, the thing that people wanted to do is they got, you went from being very young to getting younger and older and wanting to devote in an artist way. Writing of novelists were like a big thing. And then it became, in the 60s, you started having more of a thing of music, being more interesting in poetry. And of course the beat before the poetry before. As you keep going, now it tends to be, people have a lot of love for visual entertainment. So it's almost like you have to have that prepackaged thing. It's even beyond the internet.
Entertainment's very much so, even like that is a specific visual, right? Because people aren't watching as many movies, people aren't really watching as many television shows either.
Right.
Really, the arts is really being used for distractions. People want a distraction from the current reality that they are in. Definitely.
It's escape, because I think the life has become more painful as like the economy has gotten more grim, and I think people are just rushing for entertainment and quick fix kind of rush. And
they're trying to numb their exhaustion. They're exhausted, so they can't to devote to 30 minutes of your attention and focus attention to music is exhausting to a certain extent, and they are not willing to expend that energy on things that are not work or things that they view as quote unquote adult things. So entertainment and the art sometimes is a give and take a lot of times for the good stuff. You have to give your ashe or your energy for it to work.
That's right. Definitely. I agree with you. There was I could go in several directions. I'm just agreeing with that concept. That's the problem. I think in general is the things that allow us to create narratives of the whole of our experience. Like ontologies is the way philosophy would talk of it. That's not always talked of that in art. But the idea of something, or cosmology, something that explains everything, is something that is almost like the system that we live under doesn't want us to have access to or be able to have the self confidence to offer either to yourself or to others. And I feel that that's part of the problem is that we don't really read as much. As you say, we don't listen to classical music of the world, whether it be, Indian classical music or, West African classical music or Western classical music or Chinese or Japanese. I mean, there's so many kinds, Javanese,
You bring up a good point with classical music. I've been thinking about classical music because I am listening to classical music as just almost exclusively these days.
I love that.
It's been different cultures, right? It's not just Western.
Sure. I understand what you mean.
And I think it's their people. I can feel, I can hear these people are making music for something bigger than themselves, be it in the West where they're doing it for the orchestra and trying to keep the dignity of the piece, or be it in the East when same thing, but like they're also playing for like God, they're also playing to get these people to these meditative states, and to transition to African, like same thing, but more so, like you're as you're playing this music, you're guiding these people's trance states / guiding the spirits down. So it's even more of a serious role you're playing. It's interesting.
It's beautiful to think that even the West, which is very kind of drained of a lot of its own belief in itself in the last 100 years because of the terrible things that have happened. But the fact that there have been times in history of even Western classical music where that did have more effect, where people believed in things. I mean, there was at least a few revolutions in Europe that was all about the operas that were big in the 19th century. There's also the more deeper things you were describing, like the trance stuff and the achieving different levels of consciousness. That existed, but you go back further back, I think, with European music. It's like that back in Gregorian chant or the really early opera.
So the Gregorian chant definitely is where a lot of my girlfriend, she is in classical music. She has a master's in vocal performance, so she does all classical music, and she also did a lot of research into the music into the churches.
Right.
And a lot of the church music is the old church music is just trance music.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was. Oh, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah. Trancing out, but they definitely do. Like that's how you think all guys are getting visions.
Well, I think
around being struck by visions.
You're so great. You're so right. You're so right. That was the time period they lived in back then. In a way, we're kind of returning to it in a negative way sometimes now, but in a negative way. I mean, it's almost insanity is threatening in that kind of vision also. But
it's interesting because trance, you bring up a good point of it being older. I have this book. It's a researcher. It's called, let me see. I have it right here. It's the Ecstatic Trance book. It's by Felicia D. Goodman. And she went and she did a bunch of research on different cultures, Trance-States basically, because she's a researcher / scientist. And we found that these trance is pretty much been with us since we've been out of the caves or in the caves,
Sure.
And she found these shoes that are tens of thousands of years old that show different trance postures.
Oh wow!
And trance is one of those big catalysts. I believe one of the big catalysts is for human evolution. If not, was the thing that made the creator decide that the human was the seed of the soul.
That's lovely. That's lovely.
Yeah, really? I have been thinking about that I've been hypothesizing on that.
Please hold forth on that, friend. I'm listening to that. I love that where you're going with that. Say whatever you'd like to say. If you'd like to go on with that.
Oh yeah. The trance is the seat of the soul. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's, and this is a good segue because I think Africans just knew that. They're like, duh, because so much of their music is based in eliciting this trance experience. But if you really look at it, it got me thinking. Islam actually got me thinking. of how reading the accounts of the Sufis and how they were low-key not accepted in their society because they would have these ecstatic experiences just like out of nowhere, you know, like on the street, on the et cetera, and because they're constantly living in that like divinity, divine flame, you know, or what have you. But I was like, yeah, it does make sense that these would be trance states. That along with learning that about Jewish mysticism of the time, I think the Bible tries to divorce magic from itself, you know, but it just can't, because if there's supernatural things happening, that's magic, and that's not, that is there's supernatural things happening in the Bible. So a lot of these visions that these biblical prophets were having, they were found in trance states, because the rabbinic tradition had a big they would go into trance states, and then they would try to journey to the heavens, you know, to see the throne of God.
I love that.
And so Paul was definitely into that, because Paul was a rabbi at the time. And then Jesus, you know, like Jesus, I'm not really necessarily talking about Jesus, because I don't think Jesus needed to access the trance state like that.
I don't doubt
that, you know.
I mean, I could just add the Essenes. I think you probably know about the Essenes. They were a group of people who were around the time of Jesus, a little before, a little after. They were like, not so much monks, but they were like hermits, and they kind of lived out in the desert. Sometimes they come together and share scrolls and conversation and food together, but mostly they were kind of off on their own. And Jesus may have become one of those at some point in his youth, because, you know, there's this whole part of his life nobody knows about. In that time, just to complete the thought, that they were into trance states too, psychedelics and all kinds of stuff.
So yeah, it's this getting to the trance state that I find to be a very, and what happens in that space, and it's something that we will all have access to as humans. I think people don't get that part. It might be harder for some of us because we're so grounded in this reality, which is a good thing. But we still all have access to it, because like we all have access to different states of consciousness. You know, sleep is a different state of consciousness. You know, when we're sometimes like when we're going on like long drives, and like we know we're driving and we know like we got home, but it's like we've done it so many times, it's like the recollection of it is very foggy. That's kind of a trance state as well. You know, people don't think of it like that, but it is. And it's lulling the operating system of the brain, you know, to see best from this 3D reality, and remember that you are more than it. You know, you are more than that. This 3D reality is what's happening, I think, on like a spiritual level. But then on a biological level, it's something a little different, and / what you're like conscious of. So yeah, the trance state, I think, is super important. I think it needs for a lot of these traditions to work, including Christianity, really, for you to really be able to experience this like divine love and this divine light. I think you need to be caught up in the quote unquote Holy Spirit, you know, which is form of trance. And then once you taste that feeling, you know, you understand the taste of it. Definitely. So then you can find that taste in a lot of different other things. So your religious experience is not just confined to dogma.
Well, you know, I think that is, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you about this. I was talking to our brother Anthony earlier in the week, not about this, but things that touch on it. He speaks of the chakras a lot, and the Sathya wisdom, and Gnosticism. You guys should talk. I'd love to. You should all get together sometime and talk. But in any case, I was thinking that really, if you look at the second coming of Christ being all of us being Christ together,
Yeah.
and therefore it's a movement rather than something in the sky coming out. It's like all of us together might see something in the sky because we're all so happy, but it wouldn't be something in the sky. It would be all of us in a trance state doing nice, good things for people and loving God and loving each other. That would be a transformation of God into ourselves, which is a completion of a lot of Christian thought. But you're absolutely right. I think our culture, the West especially, other cultures too, but the West especially seems to have a real hard time accepting or trusting trance states. They're really afraid of trance states.
So I would say it's the West, but it's also just Abrahamic faith. So like Abrahamic faith has...
You're right.
Like it's not by design, because like we talked about, like in the Bible, these dudes were most likely like it's very impossible that these dudes were not in an ecstatic state when they're having these visions. You know, same thing with Muhammad. Like he was just writing for 10 hours.
Right.
You know, like he was in an ecstatic state, which is strange. But people they don't want you to. And this is like you can see it almost in African traditional religion sometimes if you're not practicing right. You know, they want you to go through them for your religious and your godly experience.
Forgive me. What was the word you said? They want you to be dumb. You said
go through them. They want you to go through them.
Go through them.
Go to their church, through their.
Oh, I'm so apologize. No, I understand. Through them. Them. Yes, I listen.
Them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they make you afraid. Honestly, they make you afraid of this thing that all humans have access to. Same thing with like how Christianity makes you afraid of spirits, even though spirits are all around us, you know,
and often very friendly. If you can get over your fear of ghosts or your fear of ancestors or your fear of spirits.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of like right here, the church home. There's been people here before we lived here, and they have communicated to many people in this house, and they're really benevolent. They're benevolent people.
You have some spirits that talk to some of your participants?
One more time, friend?
You have some spirits that talk to your congregation, you said?
Oh, well, not necessarily to our congregation. They just happen to be in the building.
In the building?
Well, we are right now,
Oh, interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, it's an old house. That makes a lot of sense. You have so many plants. You have so many...
We actually know who they are. I mean, because we know enough about the neighborhood. The neighborhood loved these people who lived here before us, and they came up and talked to us over the years and told us stuff about them. But it's interesting, comrade. I'll tell you, one I've never seen is Stan, who used to be a deacon over at the St. Stanley's Church, the Catholic Church down the way, and he lived here. And he had a wife and a good friend who were twin sisters, and one lived with him after the other died. So you see a kind of a feeling of Irene and Jean being kind of similar looking, and then Stan. To the point where I say Stan only appears to people who don't belong here, who are having a problem with the church, or years ago it was a collective house. People in the collective would report feeling really having bad dreams about him, and almost to a person, there were people who eventually were asked to leave or left because they were just not people or part of who were really having. I've never seen this guy because he doesn't come to me. He only throws people out, but he got my back. Whereas the woman has been seen by lots of friends who are always friends of our community. People,
interesting.
Isn't it interesting? I don't know why that is, but that's just the way these particular ghosts work.
Yeah, if you're having a bunch of issues with the death activity, you should have you heard of? I think the thing that would be most interesting and applicable to you, so the African spirituality is good. I think that it is all this stuff comes from African spirituality, just from the basis that the Middle East is kind of man-made. The Middle East is North Africa.
It's North Africa. That's right. It's Africa.
So, and the Canaan were an African tribe, you know. So
that's still Africa, that area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
I agree 30%.
The African, like in Africa, especially back then, like the swapping and the moving of deities was not a bad thing, because again, spirits were just spirits. You know, it's not. They were not trying to be like, this spirit doesn't exist. You know?
Right.
That was not the time. So spirits would move, and the deities would go from pantheon to pantheon. You know, so that really is the crux, and we can get into that a little bit another day.
Definitely.
It's very interesting. It's very eye-opening. But a lot of it stems from pretty African traditional religion. But I think the glue that brings for me all this and keeps it rotating and not exploding, because I feel like, especially when you're delving into multiple practices, and I'm not like practicing multiple practices, but even like acquiring knowledge and then relaying them back, it can get really messy if you don't have a common thread to thread through them. And for me, that's Spiritism. Spiritism was made by Allan Kardec. The practice was codified by Allan Kardec. Let's say that. The practice was codified by Allan Kardec. And basically, it was him. He was a scientist, just a scientist, you know, and he was actually living in a time period when science was trying to wrench control back from the church. The church was like giving some backlash. And during this time, actually, he got it was a bunch of like spirit activity, and he researched it, and he found out that spirits are just real. You know, like this is a thing. So what he did was he talked to them. He got mediums, and he asked them all the questions. You know, he asked them he asked them the meaning of life. He asked them how reincarnation works. He asked if there's other beings on other planets. You know, he asked all these questions that people are like, oh, you'll never get the answers to. You know, like, you know, just grind and wait. You know, because he's talking to somebody that already experienced it. Like, he's talking to somebody that's dead, so they know how dying
they're
works.
more aware of it than we are. That's gorgeous. So, forgive me. Go on with the point. I have a question too.
Oh yeah, the commonality, for me, between Christianity and all this other things is Spiritism. And I was just telling you about if you're having issues with spirits in your house, I would set up a Boveda, and the Boveda is a spiritist device. The Boveda helps me, not the Boveda, but the Spiritism helps me understand Hinduism. It helps me understand Christianity better. Like, it's helped heal my relationship with Christianity. And then it helps me stay grounded and not as traditionalist as many of my compatriots are in African spiritual religions. You know, I think they're old traditions, but they're not meant to be stagnant. They're supposed to evolve,
living culture, living tradition.
African, the Ukumi or Isheshe, any of these indigenous practices, nature-based, and so I think a good category to put indigenous religions under is nature-based religions. Because when you put it like that, you start seeing a lot of commonalities between a lot of these different practices, and they're all based on nature. So nature-based religions, yeah. Let's say that.
Well, so you described this. I'm unfamiliar with the term you used. The word you used.
Spiritism.
No, I'm sorry, not that word, friend. The word that you said that would be something we may need for spirits.
A Boveda. A Boveda is literally just a candle, a glass of water, and some religious icon.
Oh.
I have a fully set up one, and it's Boveda is Spanish. It means like bowl or bolt, and it's where you, because I have issues with spiritual activity. Like I have strong spirits. I have a lot of them. And that can affect my day-to-day life, right? I don't need this constant chatter when I'm trying to do things. It makes it hard. So the Volvita gives my spirits and the spirits a place to congregate and to channel accurately and efficiently. And so that is like the central point of communication.
Just to repeat it. So it's a candle that you have, a bowl, yeah.
It's a candle. So mine is a specific set. It's a specific set of numbers, and so I have number 7. But if you're just like trying to figure out your spirit team and just getting into the practice, it's recommended that you just have one, which will represent your connection with Olodumare or the Creator. Or like whoever. Spiritism is technically is Christian, so I have my rosemary and cross, and then you have different cups that will represent people on your spirit team. Your spirit team is like the spirits that just are with you throughout your life and don't leave. They decided that they were going to be with you before you came to Earth. Some decided, and some you actually picked up on your way. Like I feel like now I have Capolista spirits, I have Umbero spirits with me because of the path I'm walking. Like if you're walking, if you're like resonating with certain spirits, they will follow you and help you on your path.
That's
and then
beautiful.
Once they're done, they'll leave. Nice. Some spirits are with you from birth to death.
That's beautiful, friend. I'm very continue to be interested in talking to you about these things. This is wonderful. Sorry that this is a new concept to me. I just want to make it clear to me, and then for also like anyone who's watching to make sure. So the main action the main active elements of this is an icon, a candle, and some kind of vessel of water.
Yeah, so the water is kind of like the medium, so you want to kind of represent, and also flowers are something to represent Earth. You want all the 4 elements up there. The water is a medium for the spirits to talk to, and then fire is like fire, the energy.
I see.
And yeah, you just, it is a focal point for meditation. And it's a lot of, it's used across, Spiritism is not necessarily meant to be its own practice. It's meant to complement a practice. It's meant to give you tools and understanding of the framework so you can better practice whatever practice you are deciding to practice.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I recommend getting into the book. It's very, very interesting. It's called this book, and he talks about like questions that I was just like, everyone in my life told me that I would never get an answer to this, and he gave me an answer that resounded with me. And what I liked is that it's very scientific, like he is a scientist, and you can tell based off of the book he wrote.
What is the name of the author for this book? Just so I
Alan Kardec.
Alan, and how do you spell his last name, friend?
Kardec, Kardec.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I like Alan Kardec. He used a lot of mediums to compile the book, but he did the compiling. And it's Christian, that's the interesting part about it, is that a lot of these spirits were highly, highly Christian.
Lovely. Were they saints or the angels, or were they something else?
There are different classes of spirits. There are pure spirits, there are good spirits, and then there are bad spirits. I think he might have gotten in contact with a pure spirit that might have been like a saint or something like that. I don't know that part for sure. I have to do that research myself. But not all of them were saints. But the knowledgeable ones that he was getting, like all, because spirits don't know everything. Spirits only really know what they know. And the issue is that every spirit will think they know it all because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So you got to do the discerning of it yourself to see if this spirit knows what they're talking about. This is like a pure spirit, a spirit that like is very insightful and things along those lines. And he gives you like ways of doing that and whatnot. So yeah, the pure spirits are the spirits that are the ones that have the most knowledge, power, and things along those lines. So yeah, they would be like your saints, but just a different assortment of people as well. It's not just the saints.
That's wonderful.
And and maybe not even the saints, you know what I mean? The concept is the concept of reincarnation, which in my mind is powerful in Spiritism, is that every spirit's the purpose of life is to progress, you know, like that is to progress to knowledge and completeness so you can get closer to like divinity, you know, so you're constantly washing your soul of impurity. Not even really washing your soul of impurity. I feel like the soul is pure, but you're like every incarnation, you're learning something more that you didn't learn. And the last one that brings you closer to this oneness with God, you know. Once you're on that good spirit track, bad spirits are simply spirits that do not want to progress or want to do that, you know. So they're kind of just stuck, and those are your wandering spirits, your spirits that might inhabit houses that are too wrapped up in the 3D life that they like just had, or maybe sometimes not even just had. If like they're obsessive spirits that really are tied to a place, they might be there for a long ass time, you know. So.
Well, this is lovely, friend. This is lovely. Just on the note of that, while I will be talking and thinking about again with you about these things, about like that I don't really find the actual spirits that we have to be any trouble. They're very protective of the house and protective of us. I feel their warmth all the time, and I've got my ancestors here too. The ancestors that. I've got my great-grandmother, who I never met. She died 10 years before I was born.
This house also.
What's
I'm
that?
sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Have you been in the house?
What's that?
How long have you been in the house?
Oh, we moved in 2008, friend.
Oh, yeah, so you've been there a long time.
Yeah.
And the spirits see the work you're doing. Like, if they're good spirits, they very well might be good spirits that are trying to help you along your way.
They just rest here, friend. They love this house. They protect this house. It was their house for 40, 50, 70, years and years before we came. They were happily married together, and then they were friends after, like, and they just lived here, and they were very much known in the neighborhood as kind to the children. Just a lot of nice things to say about them. And I remember going up when we first moved in, we were looking through a lot of things. There were a lot of Catholic rosaries and icons and just pretty things, but there was also Bibles, and it was specifically the Liberation Theology Bibles of the late 60s, early 70s was the theology this man was into, which if you know about it is very left-wing, very pro liberation of women and liberation of everyone, anti-colonialism. Like it was really like in Latin America was a revolutionary philosophy. So all this was the pastor that raised me. I don't know, the pastor that I was in when I was a kid had been working in El Salvador with this concept. He had to be Father Leo. Man, he was a wonderful man.
Yeah,
he's dead now, or passed on. But they actually had to, like, during the time a fascist takeover had happened there. He had to be.
What country?
I believe it was El Salvador. He was smuggled out of the city in the trunk of a car because they were going to kill him. But then when he came to Chicago, he decided to be where we were because there was a lot of buildings for like retreats and stuff. And we were the first people with altar girls. We never thought altar girls were strange, but in the 70s, we were like the first Catholic church in the whole Chicagoland that had them. The pastor actually stood up to the cardinal The cardinal said, cardinal evidently was calling him back in the late 70s, early 80s. It's like, that's the first step to priesthood. And Father Leo was like, yeah. And he's like, he's like, this is a good story. She's like, well, you really can't, you can't have altar girls. And he said, if your eminence wants to come down to Calumet City and remove the altar girls yourself, you try to. And then you know what he did? He removed the papal flag from our church. He also removed the American flag from our church because he was so angry at Reagan and everybody for what they were doing in Central America. So we didn't have any flags in our church for a long time.
Interesting. That's funny that you mentioned that. I went to Reverend Slim's, one of his last services. I really do feel, and he preached.
Slim Coleman?
Yeah.
Oh, bless him. I met him. He was. When did he? What's going on?
He just recently passed.
Oh, God bless him, man. He was a very wonderful man for years and several generations. He was an active man, a Methodist man, I believe. And his partner still alive?
His partner's still alive. Yeah.
She's a wonderful lady too, and she has her own church. So they were.
Oh, I didn't know she had her own church.
I believe they both were different. I understood this to be true, that she had her church and he had his church, and the two of them together would coordinate good things. Like they were just really.
Well, so their daughter has a church.
That's my fault. Then it's may not have been his wife. May have been the daughter then. Maybe I told that story myself.
Has an actual church. I was just there yesterday. She's on the path to greatness.
That's great.
Hopefully she didn't get wrapped up in. Hopefully she didn't get. I don't think she's gonna get wrapped up in. It's funny to bring it. So to kind of catalyst for our next topic. So it's a little more structured. I think I should. With topics for me, you should boil it down. Your interests and your audience, your congregation's interests, either in Spiritism, I'm really good at. I want to help y'all and get the congregation better with the universal laws of rhythm and pitch, so that the music and the meditations can be cut through the veil.
That's beautiful, friend. Go ahead, friend.
The third one, Spiritism, the universal laws of music pitch, of harmony and pitch, and then just African spirituality. I am a resource for that as well. I'll be happy to give them the knowledge that I have. But those three things I think I feel confident in being able to talk about.
Friend, thank you so much. I will. You know what? Maybe we'll end this conversation here for this video. But let's talk maybe next week at your convenience, or sometime when it's your convenience. And I will ask friends, our congregation, people around, but also if we have questions, and I will frame some kind of perhaps specifically maybe more of an interview. Not an interview. That's hard, but I'll have a few questions that maybe you could then speak to.
Sure. Yeah. That's. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thanks, friend. Thank you so much.
Of course, yeah. I don't bogart information. I was spending it some time just making sure I had the right information, because especially since with these esoteric things, you have to have the right. You have to understand the big picture and have the right state of mind, or else you get bogged down in the esoterics.
That's right.
So that's what I was doing for a minute. But I feel pretty good about that now.
Well, brother, I really appreciate you. We've talked for a while, but let's continue. Let's continue this. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Well, I'll talk to you later. I'll be talking to you in the next week. I'll let you know what's going on, and we'll talk. We'll do this again.
Okay, sure, Sid.
Well, God bless you.
God bless you. Take care.